And what a ride California Chrome took us on in 2014. Mike, Matt, Joaquin, Paul, let's talk about the Derby and Preakness winner and the frontrunner for Horse of the Year at this moment in time, California Chrome, and all the hysteria, because at times said hysteria was nothing short of hysterical, Matt.
Well, I mean, racing fans have always loved the underdog story. I mean, Seabiscuit, going back to him, one of the all-time favorites. John Henry comes to mind, the gelding who was running once a week at Louisiana for small money in the early part of his career. And California Chrome is that rags to riches story that people love. Lucky Pulp of the Sire stands for $2,500. I think in 2015 it'll be $10,000. Love the Chase, the Dam. You know, I mean, this is a dam that owners purchased for $8,000, and they were called a dumbass for doing it. That's where Dumbass Partners came from. So people love that story.
And even on the racetrack, the dam loved the Chase. She was only 1 for 6. Her lone win was an $8,000 maiden claimer at Golden Gate. And California Chrome is the first foal that she produced.
Right.
So, yes, long shot connections from, this is hardly breed the best to the best and hope for the best. This is a modest pedigree.
And he looked like the best on that second jewel of the Triple Crown. This is when he really hit a fever pitch. California Chrome's Preakness, one of his signature races of his 3-year-old campaign, and his last win on the dirt before coming out to Del Mar and winning the Hollywood Derby.
Well, I think a lot of people don't give him credit for what he did before. You know, he ended up with 6 wins in a row at the end of the Preakness, but people forget the smashing way he did it. He won the San Felipe, the Santa Anita Derby, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and don't forget about the King Glorious in the Cal Derby, and he won those races, 6 races combined, 25 lengths, Matty. He was just crushing his competition. To me, it was a horse that just the light bulb sort of went on, because as a 2-year-old, he was average, but then when he stretched out on dirt, the light bulb went on, he's turned into something special.
Yeah, and the folks on Breeders' Cup, there are obviously a lot of great horses in that particular race, but you know, they came to the racetrack. They went to the paddock to see California Chrome. Same thing at Del Mar last month. I mean, it was crazy. I wasn't there, but I sensed it was sort of like the Breeders' Cup was Zenyatta a few years ago versus Blame. So the popularity there, I know this isn't a Horse of the Year discussion, but all 6 wins this year were stakes wins, 4 grade 1s. I know Byron only had 2 grade 1s. Same for Shared Belief. You know, I think this horse had the intangibles that those 2 horses probably didn't have.
They certainly had the popularity, but let's talk about that one defeat that really defined his spring and summer campaign, and that was in the Belmont Stakes. He finishes 4th. Another horse stepped on his foot out of the gate, might have been compromised a little by that. Could have been just the end of a long campaign. However, once again, we don't have a Triple Crown winner. Joaquin, let's ask you, the Triple Crown drought, are we going to see this continue, or did California Chrome make you think, hey, perhaps we could get a Triple Crown winner someday?
I think we can get a Triple Crown winner someday. When that is, I don't know, but we've been close. You think of Silver Charm, you think of Real Quiet, Smarty Jones.
But let's not change the rules in order to get it.
No, absolutely not.
Change the rules.
And that's part of the reason we shouldn't change the rules.
Space out the races further.
And that's part of the reason we shouldn't change it, because yes, we've had no Triple Crown winner since affirmed in 1978, but there's been numerous chances to possibly have a Triple Crown winner.
Let's not change it so when it finally happens, there's an asterisk next to it.
No, I'm with you. I don't want to change this at all. 3 races in 5 weeks at three different racetracks in 3 different states. It
hasn't always been that way. It's only been that way since the 1960s. And prior to that, there were years where the Belmont was run before the Preakness. I mean, they have changed the dates before.
They have.
So it wouldn't be completely out of the ordinary for that to happen.
Yeah.
I understand we want to preserve that, but I don't think it's necessarily like this hallowed ground that we absolutely, under no circumstances, can ever change.
But we've had numerous chances the way it's been. There's been no Triple Crown winner since 1978, but we've been close. If just one of those horses, if Real Quiet gets his nose down on the wire first, if Smarty Jones doesn't go very quickly or early on down the backstretch, if just one horse wins the Triple Crown since 78, we're probably not having this discussion at all to even change the rules.
And I argue that it's good for racing that it hasn't happened in a while, because every year when we start talking about the Kentucky Derby, we start talking about, could there be a Triple Crown horse? If it starts getting hit, you know, fairly often, then I think the general public, I think, catches on. Wow, is a horse who could win the Triple Crown this year. I've only go to the track a couple times a year, but this is interesting stuff, because there hasn't been a horse that's done it since 1978. So I think the fact that it hasn't been hit in a long time is actually a good thing in a weird way for racing.
All right, I want to change the topic just a little bit to the last 2-time Horse of the Year, and that is Wise Dan. He had a little bit of a roller coaster ride. He came back at this age, and he looked great, but he missed a lot of time. He had the colic surgery. He had the injury at the end of the year. What do you make of his roller coaster ride this year?
It's amazing. This is a horse who was Horse of the Year, obviously, in 2012, 2013. I mean, he wins the Woodford Reserve Derby Day, May 3rd, and then he has emergency colic surgery at Rudin Riddle 13 days removed from that. He nearly dies, back in training a couple of months after that, and to come back and win the Bernard Baruch, a tick-off-the-track record in September, win the Shadwell Mile after missing the break. I think it's pretty amazing what he did. It's great that we're going to see him non-displaced fracture. The right cannon bone kept him out of the Breeders' Cup. We're going to see this horse, Paulie, next year. It's great.
Well, I was fortunate enough to see him live on the Keeneland Racecourse, and when he won his last race, when he turned his head completely sideways,
yeah.
I mean, Keno, you and I have talked about this. To me, it was the most impressive performance I've ever seen, and he's obviously a champion. But that day proved to me he knows exactly what he's doing. When he won the Bernard Baruch by this much, he knows what he's doing, and it's so exciting to see him run at 8. It was disappointing not to see him.
Yeah.
We have a horse named DeHaas that's done it in separate
You
years.
want to see him on dirt.
I do.
Too.
I want to see him on dirt.
Speaking of Bernard Baruch running New York, Joaquin, what do you think of the recent trend? Especially New York, they're doing it the best of anyone right now, putting all those stakes races on one day, having those super Saturdays like we saw with Belmont Day.
Yeah, in Belmont Day, we had some very big horses. That was a Breeders' Cup type day program before the Breeders' Cup this year at Santa Anita. For me personally, I would love to see some of the bigger days in racing. April 4th in 2015, I believe they're running the Bluegrass, the Wood Memorial, and the Santa Anita Derby all on the same day. You have Fall Stars weekend at Keeneland. You're going to have an enhanced day at Saratoga with the Whitney in the Travers Day. I like when you get a lot of graded stakes races covering a lot of different divisions, getting these types of horses.
That's what he
that
got
are going
fans,
to be.
too.
Yes, exactly.
The more dates you can circle on a calendar for big days at racetracks, the better chance that we all have of getting that friend of ours who knows a little bit about the racetrack, but they hardly ever go. They go once, twice a year.
Especially we have no racing season. Our racing season is January 1st to December 31st. So when, as Maddie just mentioned, when you could circle a date on the calendar and know that you're going to have 3, 4, 5 grade ones or particular horses that are going to be running on an outstanding all-star day card, I think it's great for the sport today.
I think people don't remember Palace Malice, Golden Sense, the 3 fillies matched up, Princess of Silmar, Closed Hatches, Beholder. A lot of people forget how huge that day was besides the scope of Tonalist, obviously winning the Belmont and beating California Chrome at the end of that day. But give credit to Marty Panza and the NYRA to culminate that on that one day. They caught lightning in a bottle, but I think they also, the light bulb went on like, hey, this could really work, and I think this is the way it's going to happen for the, especially in New York and a lot of the bigger tracks.
Yeah, Martin Panza, a new face in the New York Racing Association, but the old voice of the New York Racing Association retiring this year in Tom Durkin. Matt, and then Paul, I want you guys to give us your best Tom Durkin memory.
Well, I just thought it was huge news. I mean, he's been the voice of racing for a quarter of a century. I mean, this is a guy that made a state-bred maiden claiming event at Aqueduct seem important. He gave it gravitas, and all the big races that he called. I mean, it's sort of like, I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I turn on and if Doc Emmerich isn't doing hockey, I get a little disappointed. If Marv Alberts,
you took my run that I was going to segue to, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, if I turn on an NBA game and Marv Albert's not, I'm like, I'll still watch it. But it just loses its gusto a little bit. And it's nothing against the guys who are replacing Durkin, but he's just up here. I mean, you could argue he's the greatest of all time. He's the most familiar voice in the history of the game.
For me, as a Dodger fan, and you playing for the Dodgers, Vin Scully, one more year coming back, but it's Vin Scully for me.
Announcers, broadcasters, matter. TBS.
I say this all the time. I grew up as a Phoenix Suns fan, and Arizona's the only team that we had, and Al McCoy, and he's still the voice of the Suns. Tom Durkin, for me, at my age now, was the voice of horse racing. If you turn on any major sporting event when it came to horse racing, it was Tom Durkin. And my favorite race calls, or my favorite horse was DeHaas, is when the first Breeders' Cup, he said the American DeHaas is in front. But his signature voice, even if you go back and listen, even to the, no disrespect to any of the race callers right now, because I would think 99% of them would say he was head and shoulders the best, and he was phenomenal at what he did.
In his last call in the Spinaway, August 31st, the Splash-tastic was cool with Condo Commando winning. And then everyone in the crowd chanting like Derek Jeter, Tommy Durkin. Everyone doing that? I mean, it was awesome.
And the biggest day that we have in our sport, the Breeders' Cup. He was the first person to call the Breeders' Cup from 1984 to 2005. So for me,
Triple Crown till
all
2010.
the great races and great finishes that I can think of, and my personal favorite races, there's one voice attached to it.
You hear Tom Durkin in your head.
And that's
Yeah.
Tom Durkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great way for his career to close out. Unfortunately, we have to close out this segment. We could do this all day, but we have to get to a break. I will say this, though. Outside of this break, when we return on the year in review, we're going to take a look at the 10 best races of 2014 and look forward to some of the changes we can expect in 2015.
And Yankee Chief trails a tight pack, chasing.
Here's the winner!